Namaste, and welcome to Awaken Living with Nibodhi. This week we're discussing spring and Ayurveda's guidelines and view on the spring season. And as we move through the year, I will do a full episode on each of the seasons. And as I'm recording this, it's pouring rain, and it's wet outside, and it's cold outside, and those are major characteristics of the spring. We've all heard the saying, April showers bring May flowers. Well, it's March, and hopefully it will bring March flowers, April flowers, May flowers, flowers all the rest of the year. So spring is here, and that's the Kapha time of the year. That's the water and the earth element. When we move out of the winter months, in many parts of the world in the northern hemisphere, the winter is symbolized by cold, like really, really cold, snow, ice. And so the spring represents the melting of that. The accumulated snow and ice really start to melt. But what that does is it soaks the land. It's muddy, it's heavy, it's filled with moisture, it saturates the ground. And the landscape, the earth, the nature starts to become this wellspring of life. We're coming out of that deep winter hibernation. Spring is really symbolized by birth, new birth, rebirth, and renewal, and something new and beginning. It's a growth cycle. It's when the seeds sprout. It's when everything starts to grow again. The earth starts to manifest all its potential that's been lying dormant within. The seeds germinate, the flowers bud, the insects start coming out. We start to see the little buds of the trees with their leaves. And this is typically when our bodies, the human body, does the same thing. It's really an opportunity for a fresh, clean, rejuvenating start. And it's typically the time when we do a lot of cleansing, a lot of fasting. Our physiology changes. And actually, in each of the seasons, our physiology changes. Our microbiome changes, the way our blood pump changes, our emotions change with the seasons. But it's a time when our body is really ready to be lighter, to cleanse ourselves from any accumulated toxins we got during the winter, especially during the winter holidays where we may have eaten foods not necessarily the best for our body or overeaten, any accumulated things in the dosha like this. And it's also a time for rejuvenation. We can rejuvenate the cells of our body, the tissues of our body. But ultimately, all the world, all the natural world in the northern hemisphere is blossoming from this cold, long winter slumber. And typically in the winter, we sleep more too. It's a time for sleeping less. The sun is getting up earlier, it's staying out later. We're filled with more joy, with more inspiration. It's really this time for coming out of the womb. But one of the things is that Kapha, it is the Kapha season. It's the water and earth element. And so a lot of things happen with that. It's when we have colds and flus and allergies come. And if you aren't in tune with the cycles of the season, there may be that feeling of sluggishness, that heavy, sticky feeling. And so we need to look to Ayurveda's wisdom for the practices, for the routines that can help us overcome the challenges that spring does offer. And that can bring us back into optimum health. Because as we cleanse, as we lighten into optimum health, then we're ready for the joyous exuberation and expression in the summer months. Each season leads into the next. Spring, while it's characterized by this cold, wet, and damp, it's also characterized by warmth, because the warmth is returning. The warmth is what's melting the snow and the ice. And it's often considered in Ayurveda that spring is it's more of a gentle season. It's more nurturing. And while it can feel slower, it can also feel that joy, that the returning of the light, right? And so the Kapha dosha, water and earth, Kapha really means that which is flourishing or blossoming or thriving in the water. And so water is life. The whole earth, the whole planet, the whole human body is mostly water. And we have to remember the principle of Ayurveda that like increases like. So just by that principle alone, springtime does increase kapha, which is why we need to reduce kapha. It's when we can actually have an increase of the kapha dosha. So this is why we use spring to cleanse, to lighten ourselves, to melt away the extra. But it requires motivation. It requires inspiration. And Ayurveda offers us seasonal diets for that, lifestyles that really invite that movement. So we're not stuck in the mud. It's a time to renew. It's a time to get unstuck, to align ourselves with the beautiful natural rhythmic processes of nature. Because nature, she's fluid and she's organic. And so the spring season is a time of transition. So it's not supposed to be stuck and rigid and static. It's a time to really move. If you're a Kapha dosha, you need a Pitta or Vata friend to come wake you up at 4 o'clock in the morning and get you to that Mysore yoga class or get you to the gym or go on that hike, right? Number one is it's really important to really figure out what the climate is where you are, because the closer you are to the equator, the less dramatic that kapha, sluggish, sticky heaviness is going to be. The further north you are, the more dramatic it's going to be. So, any given day of the season, it can be cold and wet. It can also be warm and drying. So you have to see like this. I spent 7.5 years in the Colorado Rockies, and spring was wild. There would be days where it was 40 degrees Fahrenheit and the snow was melting, and it was so muddy and so sticky, it was hard to move, which was great for really cardio exercise. And then there were days where it would be 75, 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and just we'd out in our shorts and no shirt on, and hiking the same. It was still sluggish and sticky, but the sun was shining and motivating. So as the season progresses towards the summer, it's going to get lighter, it's going to get warmer, and the ground is going to dry up and the sprouts are going to come. So these patterns really vary dependent on where you live and the nuances of that climate change. So we really have to learn about our constitution, and we have to learn about adapting our spring routine almost on a day-to-day basis to really meet the season. And that's actually really beautiful. It's such a really amazing way to learn to be in tune with nature, to honor the present moment, really. I'm going to talk a bit about general Ayurvedic guidelines for the spring and what that really looks like. And then we can get into the specifics of how each dosha can manage and stay in balance during the spring season. Okay. So one of the things that's really important, and one of the most important things, is what do we do for a spring diet? Because this is a time when we do spring cleaning. We clean the house. We clean the old stagnant energy out of the house. That's also the house that we live in, the human temple, the human karma mobile. So a spring diet's typically more light. And even in nature, when the bears come out of hibernation, they're not feasting in the spring. They feasted in the summer and fall to store up for the winter because they weren't going to get any food. In the spring, the food hasn't really grown yet, so they're not getting huge amounts of food. It's a time of actual fasting. And, again, this is going to be dependent on your dosha. If you're a Vata dosha, fasting may not be appropriate. And really, if we're really in tune with nature and the earth, our microbiome changes in each of the 4 seasons, and our cravings are going to change as well. Okay? So there may be, if you are in balance, the desire for those heavier foods that are essential during the winter months, that might go away. We may want lighter foods. The appetite changes. And so the desire for the fresh fruit instead of cooked fruits, the desire for some fresh raw vegetables instead of cooked vegetables, the desire to start eating salads and juicing, these are natural things. This is a time so many juice fasts happen in the spring. So many times of doing liver cleanses and colon cleanses all happen in the spring. And that's the body's natural wisdom, the desire for these cleansing, right? And the foods that are available to do the cleansing start to grow more. So the other thing that's important, besides just doing a cleansing, understanding the 6 tastes. because remember, we have 6 tastes: sweet, sour, salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. And it's the pungent, bitter, and astringent tastes that are made up of the air and the fire qualities. And so these are the things that are naturally going to dry out the excess of kapha. They're light foods, they're warm foods, they're very easy to digest, and they help to really regulate the microbiome. So the springtime is when the bitter greens grow: the dandelion, arugula, mizuna, tatsoi, mustard greens, things like this. These bitter greens do profound cleansing to the liver, to the colon, to the blood. Sprouts are also of these 3 major tastes, and so they're also doing wonderful cleansing and rekindling the microbiome to adjust for the spring. So they open the channels of elimination. So when that's really important, the alimentary canals need to be open so that we can purify maybe the excess of mucus or the excess of fat out of the body. So one thing that Ayurveda would really encourage is starting with a light breakfast, especially if you're a Kapha or Pitta dosha, but really starting with a light breakfast. Some fresh fruits would be good, even some fresh juice, some vegetable juice, or even just tea, a warm ginger tea, a warm ginger cinnamon tea like this. Even with some green tea to stimulate the Agni, some pu'er, some raw cacao, but with these digestive stimulating spices. As always, lunch would be the main meal, but it would be lighter foods. It would be steamed vegetables. And if you are a Pitta dosha and your Agni can handle it, a big salad, maybe a little bit of cooked grains, some dal, some beans, some legumes, like a high quality vegetable lunch as per your dosha, plus some good quality light proteins. If you are eating animals, it's not really an appropriate season to eat a lot of heavy animals or even heavy plant proteins. They should be lighter plant proteins. Some khichdi, a little bit of khichdi with some lightly steamed vegetables and warm spices. And still, because remember, it's cold, it's damp, it's melting. All liquid should be consumed either warm, room temperature, or even hot. And ginger water, like warm lemon, ginger, honey water, is excellent for the day. Even a masala tea without the milk would be great. But really, the diet should be structured around eating lots of fresh foods, not necessarily raw. Again, if you're Pitta and you're in a place that's more moderate in temperature, Pitta could do raw, but just lots of fresh vegetables that are available in season and locally. A variety of different legumes and foods that tend to be more astringent or bitter or pungent in taste. We want to let go of the sweet taste. Remember, the sweet taste is made up of the water and earth element. So it's heavier. It slows the digestion down. The salty taste is made up of water. It's also a little bit heavier, right? So these things need to be, same thing with salty. It has the water component, water and fire component to it. So around fresh foods, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, fresh foods, local and in season, very important. But really, if bitter greens are available where you are, also the cruciferous vegetables, these are fantastic. If your Agni is suitable for it, even some chilies, some fresh ginger, some dry ginger. Okay. If you do need to eat animals, I would say, do it in moderation, and some, fresh water would be better than salt water, but fresh water, clean. This is important, clean local fish. And remember, just always, you can spice your meals with these pungent flavored foods: onions, garlic, ginger, black pepper, chilies, cayenne pepper. There's so many herbs and spices available. So these are, ideal foods for the spring in a general overview. I'm very excited to share with you Real Mushrooms, the sponsor of the Awakened Living podcast. I use their mushrooms every single day because they've genuinely changed my life. I trust them because they have 50 years of expertise and use 100% organic mushrooms, 0 grains, 0 fillers, which are found in most common mushroom products on the market. They use just real, organic, clinically tested mushrooms. Every morning, I use lion's mane to sharpen my thinking. I use cordyceps to give me the clean energy I need for the day. I use chaga to strengthen my immune system. And when stress hits, and it does, I use reishi to bring me back to center. With their products, you actually feel the difference. Through the end of March, Real Mushrooms gives Awakened Living with Nibodhi podcast listeners 25% off their entire first order. Use the code AWAKEN25 at checkout to get 25% off your first purchase. You can find their link in the show notes or visit nibodhi.com/mushrooms to get yours today. Just remember the principles of eating. Eat slowly, mindfully, chew well, right? And foods that should be minimized. That's also, we should look at that. The heavier foods like avocados, those are heavy. Cucumbers are cold and heavy. The sweet potatoes, squashes, zucchinis, pumpkins, these heavier foods of late summer and fall are not appropriate in the springtime. And same thing, like heavy, oily, greasy, fried foods. I mean, none of those are really that good for us anytime, but especially not at this time. And if you do have a tendency to snack, really try to eliminate that for the spring months. And also, it's not super hot yet. So with fruits, I was saying eating fresh fruits. If you're near the equator, sure, you can eat these, but if you're further away from the equator, you have to transport them. Your microbiome doesn't even support it properly. But the heavy fruits or sour fruits, that's going to aggravate the kapha. Like bananas and figs, dates, coconuts, melons. These are saved for the heat of the summer. Spring, fall, they're not as appropriate. And just use a little bit of oil when you're cooking. Don't use too much oil. A little bit of ghee if necessary. If you're vegan, just a small amount of coconut. But if you can just use water, that's better. Likewise, dairy is heavy. It's not really appropriate in the springtime, no matter what dairy it is. If you do have to have some dairy, add spices to it. Add your ginger, add your turmeric, like that. Okay? And then for the lifestyle for the spring, you want to remain as active as possible. You know, the birds are dancing, the birds are in play, the butterflies are coming out, nature's in play. So the light is returning. So embrace the light, embrace that playfulness, embrace the spring and the joy of spring. It's a time to socialize and to have more fun and initiate parties, like conscious parties, sober conscious parties. Initiate playfulness. It's a great time to play. Go out and play at the park. Go to the beach. Go wherever you go. And wake up early. Wake up before the sun. It's always good to wake before the sun. It's a little harder in the winter. It's easier in the spring and summer. But wake up before the sun. And do the dinacharya, the typical Ayurvedic dinacharyas. If you haven't been doing it all year, this is a perfect time to rekindle that. Wake up, brush your teeth, scrape your tongue. You can apply some nasya oil to open up the nasal passages, wash your face, and start the day with some warm water. If you're doing the Ayurvedic Abhyanga, the oil massage, do some warm sesame oil, rinse it off in the shower. If you don't have time for an oil massage every day, then no problem. Do it a little bit. Do it occasionally, once or twice a week. You can also get one of those beautiful dry skin brushes and do dry skin brushing 2 or 3 minutes before you take your bath. Get the lymph moving. Get the lymphatic system detoxing. Do something to the extremities to get the lymphatic system going, circulating, even tapping the skin vigorously to stimulate the circulatory system, to stimulate heat. It's really important to get our lymphatic system moving. It supports our fluid balance. It supports hydration. It supports our skin health. It supports everything. And I thoroughly encourage exercise every day, but really first thing in the morning. Make time, prioritize exercise. Like really this year, make it a non-negotiable. Whether you're doing, I would do a vigorous exercise in the spring. If you're doing slow Tai Chi or Qigong, if you have a medical condition or a physiological condition that requires you to do that, no problem. But if you're the capability of doing vigorous exercise, start with like Surya Namaskar, sun salutations, and do this is the time to do a more rapid sun salutation. You're not holding each one for 3 or 4 breaths. You inhale one, you exhale the next. You inhale one, you exhale the next. You do a vinyasa, this beautiful flow. Or go for a morning jog or run, or go to the gym, do some cardiac exercise, do some HIIT, high intensity interval training. Do something very vigorous. And if you do go to the gym, if your gym has A sauna, that's even better. Go to the sauna. If it's a dry sauna, you probably want to put some oil on before going in there and make sure that you're well hydrated. If it's a steam sauna, go in there. Detoxes the body. It's wonderful. And just a couple of things to avoid. Really, I said earlier, avoid snacking, but also avoid daytime napping. If you're in the habit of napping, don't do it. It's not recommended. It increases kapha. Okay. So exercise thing in the morning. If you're in the habit of napping, instead of taking a nap after lunch, go for a walk. Do the dishes and go for the walk. Okay. So movement is essential. If you have the ability to detox in a sauna, dry or steam, do that. Amazing. And also, just whether you're in the sauna or not, really make sure that you stay hydrated. Drink just enough fluid that you're hydrated, okay? You don't want to over fluid yourself in the spring months, but make sure that you're hydrated. Usually 2 liters, 2 quarts of warm water is sufficient for most people. And, and same thing, like our nervous system, like we have this thing called SAD. It's an emotional state, but it also stands for seasonal affective disorder. I call it sunshine absence disorder. So spring is the return of sunshine. Our nervous system, our immune system loves sunshine. We're solar beings. So go outside and get sunshine. Do something new. Start a new adventure. Do something playful. Do something that you normally wouldn't do. Go outside of the box. In fact, if you have a box in your house, just for being fun and playful, moving energy, go smash the box. Go jump on the box. Blow bubbles and jump on the box. Do something new and exciting. Spring is also, remember, it's cold, damp season. There's going to be cloudy days. I grew up in San Diego. We had this thing called June gloom. It usually went from like March until July, the coastal fog. And so it's a little gray sometimes. So if you're in a place that tends to be gray, wear warm, bright colors. If the sun is not shining on your side of the clouds, wear warm, bright colors. Wear those yellows and reds and oranges and, these beautiful warming colors. Okay. And then when the weather heats up, switch over to the aquamarine, the bright greens, the blues, purples, whites. Right. And regardless of whatever season is, really try and go to bed earlier. Try and go to bed before 10 o'clock. Right. It's super important. So diet's important, lifestyle when we wake up, when we go to bed's important, movement, having fun, play. Okay. Now, with whatever you're doing, it really should be, tailored to the individual constitution. We'll get to that soon. But one other thing that's really important in addition to our movement, okay, remember we talked about yoga, we talked about jogging, walking, you can go swimming, whatever, it doesn't matter, the gym. Doing breath work is also really important. Pranayama, the expansion of our prana, of our life force. Okay. Again, kapha is predominant in the end of winter and the beginning of spring. And that has a lot of congestion in the body when it's out of balance, and the allergies because the immune system's compromised. Pranayama really helps to open the channels of the lungs, to warm the kidneys, to open the heart space. So doing a very specific pranayama is really beneficial in the spring months. Again, if you have a health condition that doesn't support it, then okay, no problem. But doing Kapalabhati and Bhastrika, breath of fire and skull shining, rapid breathing is very beneficial in the springtime. Again, it helps to cleanse the prana channel, the lungs, the heart, the circulatory system. It warms the blood. It warms the kidneys. It keeps the heart open. It feels really good. It feels amazing. And if you're out in nature, sit by a lake, sit by a river, and do that vigorating breath work. And the same thing, like when you're doing the sun salutations, you can do it with a little bit more rapid breathing as well. Really important. But the springtime, such a valuable time for pranayama. It just brings lightness to the body and the mind. I can't recommend it enough. Okay, it's perfect. It's cleansing. You can also do nadi shodhana. It's alternate nostril breathing that's done rapidly. It cleanses the nadis. Shodhana is cleansing. Nadis is the Ida and Pingala nadi and the Sushumna nadi, the 3 main channels which consciousness moves through in the body. So this is really beautiful things to do. And then likewise, at the end of a yoga practice, at the end of a breathwork practice, it's really good to do a shavasana, the corpse pose, to stabilize the prana. But in the springtime, don't do a 10-minute shavasana. Do a 2 or 3-minute shavasana and get going with your day, okay? You don't want to have that tamasic kapha sluggishness. So it should be very short just to stabilize the pranayama. And yeah, so these are really just very good general tips and general guidelines for the spring season. So let's now look at what that looks like for each dosha. And since spring is governed by Kapha dosha, I'll start with Kapha first. Remember, Kapha is made up of the water and earth element. And it's the dosha that often gives the most resistance to change. It's heavy, it's sluggish, and sometimes when it's out of balance, it can be very uninspired, right? And so spring, again, comes with it this heaviness. And so it can, when the kapha is not motivated, not inspired, it can reinforce some of those more challenging tendencies. So we want to do the opposite of that, as we want kapha to be bursting with life force, with newness and energy. So it's important for a kapha to really keep the goal in mind, keep the focus, the life-supporting, energizing aspects of the spring. Focus on the sprouts, focus on the sunshine, focus on warmth, focus on a routine. Really, kapha can make a commitment to doing a routine and stick with that. Have some non-negotiables. I think that's really valuable, having non-negotiables. And even if necessary, have an accountability partner, whether that's your intimate partner or just a friend who can hold you accountable. So just the fuel for a kapha's body, remember, we need lighter foods. Kapha needs those lighter foods, more drying foods that will help kind of mitigate that heavy moisture. So kapha especially should focus on the pungent, bitter, and astringent tastes. And even less food, more of a minimalistic kind of way of eating. I'm a little jealous because I'm a Pitta type. Kaphas can eat as much chilies to an extent that they want. I have to be very careful with my stomach. It's a little sensitive. I can't eat all the chilies, but I love chilies. I grew up eating them. So kapha's blessed that they can eat lots of hot, spicy chilies, okay? One of the things that's really important for kapha is to eat smaller meals and definitely no snacking. The stomach's capacity for food by metric volume is about 3 cups. And the stomach should never be more than maximum 3/4 full. We need room for the prana and the agni, the air and the fire, the digestive enzymes, to break down the food. So if the stomach is full, there's not a lot of root or movement happening in the digestive process. So definitely for kapha, they should be eating the smallest amount of food, not the most amount of food, and really not snacking. Because for anyone, snacking is not ideal, because we make digestive enzymes at certain times of the day, essentially between about 7 and 9 o'clock in the morning, between 12 and 2 in the afternoon, and again between 5 and 7 at night. The most enzymes in the middle of the day, the medium amount in the morning, and the least amount in the evening. In between the meals, we're not making digestive enzymes. The body's busy converting the previous meal into healthy tissue. So snacking, not only the food doesn't digest properly, it disrupts the metabolic conversion of the previous meal. So for a kapha especially, snacking in the spring is detrimental to the health. And really, kapha should really reduce those sweets, those desserts. If you are going to have a little bit of sweet or dessert, kapha, have dessert first. It's easier to digest first than at the end. And yeah, kapha has a deep love for food, and rightfully so. Food's wonderful. It's made of the earth and water element. It's got all 6 tastes, but it's made of, food comes from Mother Earth. It should be the right food in the right quantities with the right amount of spices. Still, enjoy eating. Chew it thoroughly, and savor every mouthful, but do it as it's appropriate for your body type and for the season. And again, kapha would do really good with some really good warming spices. Cinnamon, cardamom, like garam masala, the Indian curries, Thai curries, ginger. Some people like mustard seeds, some people don't. Kind of like cilantro. People really like it or they really don't like it. Or licorice. You really like licorice or you really don't like licorice. It's the same thing with mustard seeds. So if you can deal with that, have some of that. And as the spring provides it, Increase the amount of fresh fruits and fresh vegetables that are local and in season. Okay. And still, Kapha always is going to do a little bit better with cooked food versus raw food, especially at the beginning of spring. Later, as the spring comes, some raw dandelion greens, arugula, and a salad with some warming spices could be okay. And again, if Kapha can avoid dairy, it's really good. Maybe some goat milk. Goat milk is much lighter than cow's milk, and warm it up and put some spices in there. Make like a golden milk out of it. Some ginger, some turmeric. I know one thing that Kapha could do would be like a little bit of that cottage cheese. It's a little bit easier to digest. Put black pepper, ginger in there, put cinnamon in there. But ultimately, Kapha is better avoiding dairy as much as possible. Okay. And the heavy, dense, oily food, of course, that's hard to digest. Oil's hard to heavy oil, especially fried food. Really, just a little bit of ghee or olive oil maybe on the food, but really avoid those heavy things. And then, super important for Kapha is to get excited. So if you're not excited, wake up and start doing jumping jacks. Wake up and have a drum, a djembe next to your bed and start beating on the drum. Kapha needs laughter and fun and play because these are what's going to catalyze you to thoroughly enjoy the spring season. Okay. Invite fun, invite clarity, invite an intention. I've had a friend of mine sings in one of his songs, "The purpose of life is to lead a life full of purpose." This is especially true for Kapha and in the spring. Kapha, the early childhood, the first 20 years of life, it's Kapha stage, it's childhood. So adapt that childhood, that childlike sense of humor, that childlike sense of joy, of innocence, of playfulness. And if you have the pattern of being tamasic, of being heavy, of lethargy, of melancholy, then, really try to push beyond that. Use will to go beyond it. Kapha needs to use will more. And again, if you have an accountability friend, that's really helpful. But really try to get motivated, try to get inspired, clarify your goals, and have someone to help you. And more than anything, Kapha, early to bed, early to rise. This is the ancient wisdom of Winnie the Pooh. He said, early to bed, early to rise makes a bear happy, healthy, and wise. And then what is Winnie? Winnie's a little Kapha, right? And so then what does he do? He gets up early and he goes and gets the honey, which is lightning for Kapha. So a little bit of warm water, not hot water, but warm water with some ginger, some honey in there. Beautiful. Okay. And Kapha, the last thing, just really a reminder: exercise, 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 exercise. You have a strength and a stamina in you. So use that and get your heart pumping and get your body warm and get the circulation going and play, play, play. Go dancing, go rollerblading, go jump on a trampoline, do something. Dancing, I think, is the best, actually. Whatever kind of dance you like, whatever music, even if you go to ecstatic dance, you can go be with a sober community. You can go take a dance class or just put on music and dance in your room. So that's spring in a nutshell for Kapha. For a Pitta constitution, Pitta is already fire. So the fire is returning. So Pitta really tends to love spring. I'm Pitta, I love spring. Pitta has that light quality to it, that hot nature, sharp, and Pitta is actually calmed by the heavy cooling qualities of spring. But Pitta does have liquid. Pitta has some water and has oily qualities. And so if Pitta is not mindful, they can also become out of balance and develop a little Kapha. A Pitta type really is most balanced in the spring. And Pitta does really good fasting in the springtime. And Pitta, Pitta's balanced by bitter. I personally love the bitter taste. I love bitter foods. I also love pungent foods, which aren't so great for the Pitta. But one of the things that Pitta really wants to focus on, again, just like Kapha, is those bitter foods. And really, a lot of the bitter and the astringent foods are balancing for both Pitta and Kapha, but especially for Pitta. And Pitta can do more of the salads. Pitta can do more of the raw foods, more sprouts, and more vegetable juicing. And some of the other kind of bitter and astringent foods, if Pitta is doing a lot of grains, barley is actually an astringent grain. It's actually good for both Pitta and Kapha as long as you don't have a gluten intolerance. Beans, black beans, lentils, mung beans, kidney beans, these are all fantastic. So, but really ultimately Pitta thrives in the spring on doing cleanses, on doing fasting. Pitta loves more than any other constitution those kind of raw foods and juicing and other things. As long as they're available relatively locally and in season, fresh fruits are really good. Berries, red, blue, and purple fruits like pomegranates, raisins, dragon fruit's usually more in the fall, but any red, blue, and purples are really good. Red apples. And Pitta does really good with khichdi. Pitta does really good with basmati rice, things like that. Pitta can do a little more dairy than Kapha, but still keep it light. A little bit of ghee, a little bit of goat milk. If you're doing heavier than that, maybe some soft goat cheese or something like this. Seeds are also really good for Pitta, especially pumpkin seeds. They have such a beneficial effect on the liver. And while Pitta does okay with most spices, really Pitta should try and avoid the excessive amounts of chilies. Fresh ginger is definitely better for a Pitta than dry ginger. Pitta does great with CCF. That's one of my favorite teas when I was in Ayurveda school. It's a combination of cumin, coriander, and fennel seed. It's so nurturing for the digestive system. Cinnamon is great. Turmeric is great. All the Western herbs and spices like basil, thyme, tarragon, dill. These are wonderful. Saffron, vanilla. But a really great Pitta tea all spring is CCF, cumin, coriander, fennel tea, or CCFG, cumin, coriander, fennel, and some fresh ginger tea. Pitta, again, avoid excessive amounts of chilies and avoid heavy food just like Kapha. Okay, Pitta is a great time to cleanse. And for the lifestyle things, Pitta could slow down. Pitta actually tends to be most active in the winter and the summer. So Pitta, it's a time for not being over aggressive with your exercise. Focused intention is great. There's certain exercises we can do in 10-15 minutes, certain high intensity interval training, or certain yoga practices that we can do that are equivalent to doing 90 minutes in the gym. Pitta needs to hone in and focus their energy where they're putting it in the springtime. Not focused on overachieving or doing as much as possible. Doing a bit with intended focus. That Pitta tends to have a perfectionist attitude. Better is intention. Get rid of that perfectionism, get rid of the self-criticism, get rid of that excessive amount of intensity. Focused, dedicated actions with passion. Okay? Well, let go of that pressure you put on yourself. And even, I'm not saying lower your standards, but be more relaxed about things. Just enjoy. And Pitta does really good at that when they do the Ayurvedic oil massage, the Abhyanga. I love this. It's so wonderful. And for a Pitta, the sesame oil that's great for a Kapha or Vata, it might be too heating. If Pitta's in a really cold environment, it's probably fine. But otherwise, Pitta could do something like a sunflower oil, or if it's really warm, coconut oil. That's really nice. Okay. And with saunas, the sweating, it's still good for a Pitta to sweat, just like a Kapha, but not the dry sauna. It dries out the tissues. It actually creates too much inflammation. A steam sauna is much better. And for a Pitta, if they're going in the sauna, take a cool washcloth, get it wet, and keep it on the head. You don't want to overheat, okay? You have to do it properly with intention. And then really one of the most important things as far as exercise, sweating, cleansing, these lifestyle things for a Pitta is being playful. Really experiencing that joy, experiencing play, a lightheartedness in whatever you're doing. Instead of that drive to push, that drive for perfectionism, let that childlike innocence come out. And same thing, like even in a yoga practice, Pitta loves intense yoga, the Ashtanga yoga, the 4 a.m. Ashtanga yoga class, or even the hot yoga class. But Pitta needs a more balancing yoga practice, more yin practice, more restorative practice, or even with the vinyasa, the flow, it should be a couple breaths in each asana, not just a consistent movement. And likewise with pranayama for a pitta, it should be more regulated. It doesn't need to be so fast and intense. Anuloma viloma, it's alternate nostril breathing. And a pitta can do it with equal counts. They can inhale for the count of 4 or 6, hold for the count of 4 or 6, exhale the same, external retention the same, and just keep going back and forth in equal measures to regulate the pitta mind, the excessive mind. Pitta doesn't need to do the breath of fire, anything like that. Even Brahmari bee humming is very calming. It actually tones the vagus nerve and stimulates that serotonin dopamine quality, that happiness and contentment hormone. So Pitta should really try to create a balance between the disciplined routine, which is so important, and that childlike, playful innocence, between focused intention and purpose and deep relaxation. And likewise, with any constitution, going to bed ideally by 10 o'clock, waking up before the sunrise is really good. So these are just general Pitta recommendations. Pitta also tends to eat too fast, so Pitta can slow down, chew, enjoy the food, enjoy mindfulness around it. And lastly, Vata. Okay, so Vata, as we know, is made up of the air and ether element. That's exactly opposite of the wet, damp earth that is the Kapha. And so Vata is not as disrupted in the springtime as a Kapha or a Pitta. They actually, as long as they stay warm, enjoy the heaviness, the slowness, that damp stickiness of the spring. It's actually, for a lot of Vatas, I know, it is the season where they thrive the most. It's a season that they actually enjoy the most. It's quite balancing for a Vata. So, it's the challenge is not to deal with the negative quality of it, but to just fully harness the blessings that spring can bring, right? So what Vata needs to do, again, it's still cold, and Vata has that coldness that it shares with Kapha. So it should be eating, Vata should be eating warm cooked foods. Okay. As in the beginning, Vatas shouldn't really cleanse in the first part of spring unless they're really toxic. Vatas, if they want to cleanse, can do it later in the spring. And likewise, just like with a Pitta can eat raw food most of the spring, Vata should still have those warm, cooked, nourishing foods for the first part of spring. Lots of fresh fruits, cooked apples, stewed apples, pears, peaches, berries, whatever is available. Warm, cooked vegetables. Not so much raw, not yet at least. Okay. And Vatas do great with oil. Cook the food with ghee, or put ghee on there. Put sesame oil on there. Put olive oil on there, and eat those warm foods. And for the spring months, it's actually good for Vata to eat a healthy, moderate breakfast, a little bit more than in the winter months or in the fall. And a really healthy breakfast, really healthy lunch, really important. But again, Vata, pay attention to the season, because if it's spring, but you're in the northeastern part of the United States and you're having a snowstorm and it's in single digits, which can happen. That can happen in Colorado too. I was in Colorado one year in the middle of May and it snowed 4 feet. So you have to pay attention to what's actually happening outside as to what activities you're going to do, what your food choice is going to be that way. Because normally I'd say in May, middle of May, eating some raw foods with nice oil, nuts, and seeds on it might be okay for a Vata, not if it's snowing 4 feet, right? So pay attention to what's going on outside. Eating warm cooked food. You can eat heavier foods. You can eat the avocados. You can eat quinoa. You can eat the basmati rice, the root vegetables. Dark leafy greens are wonderful. They're packed with nutrients. They need to be cooked, not raw. Okay? So things like this. And then, Vata does good with the sweet taste. So have, ideally something healthy and natural. Make your own seed cookies, your own seed muffins that are sweetened with natural organic sugars, or some stewed apples, baked apples with cinnamon, ginger, cardamom, some raw coconut sugar, raw cane sugar like this. Okay. What's not great for Vata, which Vatas tend to like, is dried foods. Like Vatas tend to love popcorn and rice cakes and dried crackers and dried fruits. All these dried things don't help Vata. So Vata, warm cooked foods still. Okay. And likewise, Vata needs sleep, so prioritize good, adequate sleep. But, 10 to 6 is good, or 10 to 5 is good, 9 to 5 is good. And really, the morning routine is so important because that sets the standard for the day. That sets the tone for the day. It gives the focus for the day. So when Vata's mind is scattered, if you start with a non-negotiable morning routine, the mind is focused, the energy is focused for the day. Okay? And it shouldn't be under or overactive. It should be medium, gentle, grounding, calming, but also moving. So the circulation is happening. Okay. So before practice, Vata is great with that oil massage. A warm, hydrating, nourishing, nurturing oil. Sesame oil is fantastic. You can cook some, Ayurvedic herbs into there and make a medicated oil also. You can cook ashwagandha or bala or shatavari or licorice into the oil and massage with that medicated oil as well. But Vata should warm it up a little bit in the spring. And then for the Vata constitution, your exercise, doing a yoga practice that's medium pace, that's graceful, that also incorporates the rest and restoration poses, the restorative poses. So doing some sun salutations, doing some standing poses, and doing restorative poses. And Vata can do a longer Shavasana. Vata can do a 5, 7, 10-minute Shavasana to ground and support the nervous system, because the Ritu Sandhis, these are the changes, the changes of the seasons. Spring and fall are the most Vata aggravating. So Vata can get aggravated just at the beginning of spring and the beginning of fall. So doing these grounding, nervous system, restorative Shavasanas is really nice, or a slow, long, meditative, intentional walk in the nature. And for Vata to do breath work, more of the full yogic breathing, the 3-part yogic breathing into the lower belly, breathing into the middle abdomen, middle lungs into the upper lungs on an inhalation, and exhaling from the top of the lungs to the middle of the lungs to the belly. 3-part yogic breathing. Gentle alternate nostril breathing is wonderful. And just doing things in a calm, relaxed, enjoyable, focused manner. And likewise, just, with hydration. In the springtime, it's really important that everyone, especially Vata and Kapha, drinks more hot, more warm water. Pitta can drink room temperature to warm water. But just doing things for Vata at a more mindful pace. Slowing down if Vata was overactive in the winter months. Slowing down to the flow of nature. Those seeds, when they go beneath the earth, they don't sprout overnight. They take their time. Nature takes her time. So doing things slowly, mindfully, breathing deeply, breathing calmly, eating slowly, enjoying the nourishment of the food, enjoying the nourishment of the season, because Vata is dry and light. And so the warmth, or the moisture in the earth basing, can really nourish Vata. And then late spring, summer, Vata can flourish and just have the best summer ever. So those are the 3 doshas, and those are generalizations of the 3 doshas, but it's enough to really give an understanding of how the 3 doshas work in the springtime. And if you're interested in really tailoring it to your unique needs, I'm available for online consultations and everything: diet, lifestyle, herbal programs, cleansing if necessary, can be tailored to your specific individual need. So if you enjoyed today's podcast, rate it, review it, share it with someone who you think can benefit from hearing this information. And please, as always, fill your heart with love, fill your light with love, fill your love with light, and really express that in every action every day. The world needs your love. The world needs your light. The world needs us to be in our highest selves. When we're functioning in our highest self, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, we give the rest of the world permission to do the same. We give our family, our friends, our community. And then we can create the world we want to live in. As Gandhi said, be the change that you want to see in the world. And as the seasons change, we need to adapt. We need to change. Life is always changing, and it's the ability to adapt that makes it a fun, joyful play. If we resist, then the result it's suffering. If we resist what is, we suffer. So here's to non-resistance, here's to spring, here's to the seeds cracking through the earth, the light shining through the sluggish, dark, sticky heaviness, and a joyful spring, and planting the seeds so we can bear fruits in the summertime. Namaste.